Hi, this is Carrie Swanson, and I'm here today to talk about basic horse management. I'm an extension agent located in Albemarle County, but more importantly, I'm a lifelong horse owner and I manage and own my own small farm. I'll start by saying that 30 minutes is not enough time to cover everything there is to know about managing horses, but hopefully I'll be able to identify topics you need to explore further. I'm going to focus on basic horse management for the first-time horse owner. If you're thinking about starting a horse business, that's a much more complex topic, but everything we will cover here will still apply. Horses evolved as grazing animals roaming over large expanses of land. This is important to keep in mind because their digestive systems are designed such that forage, grass, or hay needs to be the majority of their diet. They also require exercise, whether that's in the pasture or under saddle. They need to move in order to stay healthy. In addition, horses are herd animals. While there are rare individuals that may be content to live alone, most would be in distress and all horses are happier with company. So plan on more than one horse, or at least a donkey or a couple of goats for companionship. Horses evolved eating forage, and their digestive tracts are designed to handle small amounts of forage eaten throughout the day. The first part of a horse's digestive system is similar to ours. Food enters the stomach, sugars and starches are broken down and absorbed by the small intestine. Then the harder to digest fiber passes into the hindgut and is broken down by fermentation in the cecum before being absorbed in the large intestine. It takes 2 to 3 days for the material to pass through the GI tract of a horse. Most of this time, about 2.5 days, is spent in the hindgut, because most, if not all, of a horse's diet has been and should be forage. Horses have a small stomach, and they don't have a gallbladder like cattle that releases a bunch of bile to help break down large quantities of feed. They were designed to eat small amounts of feed throughout the day. In show horses and race horses, which are commonly fed hay and grain twice a day, stomach ulcers are common. But in wild horses that eat little bits throughout the day, ulcers are practically unheard of. This is why you should provide forage throughout the day, and this might mean feeding a more mature hay so that your horse needs to eat more of it in order to meet their needs, rather than a really lush hay that you need to feed small amounts of. Horse hay should also be mold-free. You can get away with feeding moldy hay to cattle because the fermentation part of their digestion happens in their 4-compartment stomach, called the rumen, and toxins get broken down by the good bacteria. In the horse, these toxins get absorbed in the small intestine, which comes before the fermentation that occurs in their cecum. That's why you'll commonly see hay marketed as cattle hay or horse hay. Most livestock species were developed with the same purpose, to put maximum gain on animals in the shortest amount of time. This is not the case with horses, and in fact, because horse breeds were developed for vastly different purposes, their needs can vary greatly too. Young growing horses, lactating mares, and horses that are in heavy competition have greatly increased need for protein, energy, and other nutrients. But the majority of our pleasure horses have relatively low requirements. They're only ridden a few hours a week, burning much less calories than their wild ancestors, and are grazed on improved varieties of grass, which mean more calories. As a result, horses on good pasture often don't need any grain. In fact, it's more common for them to need a grazing muzzle or limited grazing time in order to reduce the amount of calories they get. Horses that are too fat are at risk for founder or laminitis. The laminae are connective tissue that hold the horse's hoof to the bone underneath and can become inflamed or weakened due to rich diets, especially in overweight horses. This can lead to permanent lameness or even death. It's important to monitor your horse's body condition score and adjust grazing time or intake in order to keep them at an appropriate weight. Body condition scoring involves gauging the amount of fat over certain parts of a horse's body. The most commonly used is the Henneke method, and this ranks horses on a scale of 1 to 9, with 1 being extremely thin and 9 being obese. The ideal score is going to vary due to breed, conformation, age, and use, but generally you want to aim for between 4 and 6. I'm including a link to the descriptions for the various scores on the website. While you can learn from pictures, the best way to evaluate a horse's body condition score is going to be by putting your hands on them. Reevaluate your horses over time to monitor their condition. Weight tapes and photos can also help. This photo shows the areas of fat deposition that are used to evaluate body condition in horse. One of the most common questions I get is how much land do I need to keep a horse? First, check with your homeowners association and/or your county zoning office to find out if you can keep horses on your land and what restrictions might be in place. In order to maintain vegetative cover, and by this I mean some type of plant matter that holds the soil in place, a good general rule of thumb is at least 2 acres per horse of well-managed established pasture. This will ensure enough space for the horse to exercise, provide majority of the horse's nutrition, and help ensure that you don't end up with a mud pit. Keep in mind that 2 acres per horse does not include the house site, your lawn, barn, arena, driveway, or wooded areas. You can convert woods to pasture, and that's another common question that I get. Keep in mind that that process is both expensive and takes time, and we're talking years to establish grass and to get good cover. So it's just an extra thing to consider. Stocking rate is a term used to describe the number of animals on a certain piece of land, on a certain amount of land. And in this case, we would recommend at least a minimum of 2 to 3 acres per 1,000 pounds of horse. And so if you've got ponies, then that weigh less than that, you may end up not needing quite as much land. If you've got horses, draft horses that are larger than 1,000 pounds, it may require a little bit more. Another thing that folks often ask as well, I've got my horses in the barn half the time and out on pasture half the time. So 12 hours of turnout does not mean you've got half a horse. A horse is actually able to eat the same amount of pasture in 4 to 6 hours as they can in 24. So unless your turnout is less than 4 hours, it still results in the same stocking rate. We don't have time to cover pasture management in its entirety, but we do have time to touch on one key component: grazing management. This is also the part of pasture management that horse owners often overlook or don't understand. Most of the time, I see horses turned out into the same paddock every day. This is what we call continuous grazing. In this scenario, grass doesn't really get an opportunity to recover from grazing events. What little regrowth the plant is able to manage quickly gets grazed off again because horses will select for the most tender growth, that new growth. You can see that the more rest the plant gets, the more leaf matter it has, and therefore the more opportunity for photosynthesis. But also, the deeper the roots grow. This means that the plant is better able to pull nutrients from the soil, especially during times of drought. It also means a stronger root system in place to protect from damage due to galloping hooves and erosion from heavy rains. Many horse owners are familiar with the concept, or at least the term, rotational grazing, but not very many implement it. So the key to this system is rest or recovery time, like we talked about on the last slide. And I like to say that this is much like caring for your own lawn, where you might come in once a week and mow the grass, but the rest of the week the grass is allowed to rest and regrow. This allows the leaf surface enough time to make energy and send that energy down into the roots. The energy stores are used for regrowth and provide for a thicker, healthier stand of grass. In the ideal rotational grazing scenario, we have at least 4 paddocks for each group of horses, and a stocking rate for the total area that group grazes of 2 to 3 acres per horse. Horses graze each paddock for no more than a week, and the grass is not grazed lower than 3 inches. This allows each paddock 3 or more weeks of rest before being regrazed and ensures that the grass has enough energy stores to recover. A dry lot is used when paddocks are too wet or the grass is dormant. In this design, the dry lot can also be left open to provide access back to shelter and water sources. While 4 or more paddocks per group of horses is ideal, keep in mind that some rest is better than no rest. So if the best you can do is to divide your pasture into 2 paddocks and graze one side at a time, that's still better than continuous grazing. The term dry lot or sacrifice lot is used to describe an area where you do not attempt to maintain vegetative cover. This should be a relatively level area, ideally on high ground, and may require stone dust or footing depending on the number of horses you have and how much time they spend in it. Dry lots are critical tools for managing pasture as well as managing horses that need limited grazing. Next to grazing management, soil nutrition is the most important consideration in growing and maintaining healthy pastures. A soil test can help you determine lime and fertilizer needs. Your local extension agent can talk you through how to take a soil sample and how to submit that sample for analysis at Virginia Tech. There's no charge for the analysis, you just have to pay the postage to the lab. In most areas of the state, acidic soils are common. You can adjust low pH by applying lime. You want to have a pH above 6 and ideally between 6.2 and 6.8 so that grasses and clovers can absorb nutrients in your soil. It takes about 3 to 6 months for lime to adjust the pH, and you can apply lime anytime the ground is not frozen. The best time to fertilize cool season pastures is in the fall. This provides nutrients for the grass when it's trying to store energy to use for next year and avoids fertilizing warm season weeds that may be in your pastures. Providing ideal growing conditions for your grass, along with good grazing management, will thicken your grass stand and allow it to crowd out weeds. Another common question I get is what type of fence is best for horses? The answer depends on your situation. Is your herd of horses relatively static, or do you introduce new horses often? Is your farm on a busy road? Do you have high energy thoroughbreds or calm quarter horses? Are we talking breeding stallions or weanlings that might put extra pressure on the fence? How large is the paddock? As a general rule, the smaller the area, the stronger the fence needs to be. In addition, consider other animals you might need to keep in or out of the pasture and any other uses you have for the land. Two key factors to consider when looking at horse fencing are strength and visibility. Horses don't see as well as we do, and they have high flight response. If they spook or get to running across a field with new herd mates, you want the fence to be easy to see. Barbed wire and bare high tensile wire are not ideal for horses because they're hard to see and can cause significant injury to horses who get tangled in it. A top board or coated wire adds visibility. This is especially important for young horses or in situations where new horses are being introduced to each other or to the farm. For woven wire fences, make sure the openings are no larger than 4 inches by 4 inches to prevent horses from getting a hoof stuck. Electric fence can be a good choice for horses provided they can see it and that when they touch it, it's hot. Electric fence is not the best choice for perimeter fencing, especially if you're near a busy road, and it's also not the best choice for smaller confined spaces. Horses should be taught to respect the fence in a controlled situation. For example, an electric division fence within a board fence paddock. I prefer electric tape or electric rope over bare wire or poly wire because they're easier to see. Electric fence is easier to move and cheaper to install, but it must be properly grounded and will require maintenance like all other fence. I like to use an indicator light that clips to the fence and blinks to let you know the fence is working. The weather in Virginia is relatively mild, so most horses can make do with natural shade and windbreak from trees. A 3-sided run-in shed is even better and may be necessary depending on the age of your horse and how thick a coat it has. Horses actually prefer cooler temps, but may need extra protection in freezing, wet weather conditions. One way to help horses stay warm is to provide free choice hay. Hay is digested in the hindgut via fermentation, which generates more heat than the digestion of grain. Having adequate hay storage will allow you to take advantage of the best prices and to provide consistent quality to your horses. Ideally, you would have enough space to store a full year's worth of hay at once. You will pay a premium for smaller loads, especially if you need them delivered, and it can be hard to find quality hay during mid to late winter, so it's best to have at least several months' worth. Storage can be a hayloft, a separate building, or a 3-sided shed, even a tarp. If the hay is stored on the ground, use pallets or a layer of straw bales to keep moisture from spoiling your hay. When locating your hay storage, make sure it's accessible for delivery vehicles and in bad weather. It may not be a glamorous topic, but it's one worth mentioning. Horses produce about 50 pounds of manure a day. Those piles do contain valuable nutrients, but can also attract flies and harbor internal parasite eggs. Whether you drag pastures to break up piles, compost manure to kill weed seeds and internal parasites, or build a manure storage facility to prevent runoff until manure can be hauled off-site, a little research can make a huge difference. Talk to your local extension agent about developing a nutrient management plan. When planning or making improvements to your farm, keep accessibility in mind. Trucks, trailers, and large equipment make wide turns and need wider gate openings. Lime and fertilizer spreaders, hay and feed deliveries, not to mention emergency vehicles, will need to get in and out. Make sure each pasture has at least one gate that is 12 foot wide or more. Set fences back from the driveway and access roads, and have your address well marked. In addition to emergency vehicle access, be sure to have an emergency plan for common and not so common weather events and natural disasters. We see snowstorms, hurricanes, flooding, forest fires, and high winds each year in Virginia, and planning ahead will make weathering the storm much easier. Make sure you can provide hay and water to your animals during power outages and snowstorms. If you rely on round bales delivered once a week, maybe that means an emergency stash of square bales for when the hay guy can't make it through the snow. Have extra fence boards or electric tape and a solar charger to use if a tree takes out a section of fence. A good goal is to be prepared to care for all your animals without outside help for 3 days. If your area is prone to flooding, hurricanes, or fire, make sure to scope out potential evacuation sites and routes, and train your horses to load on a trailer. If you do have to evacuate without your horses, microchips, tattoos, and pictures of you with your horses can help reunite you with your animals later. Finally, make sure you have a team of professionals to lean on. You'll need a farrier every 6 to 8 weeks to trim feet, and a vet at least once or twice a year for routine shots and dental work. Have their numbers posted by the phone and backup options in case they aren't available. Even if you're an experienced horse person, having a trainer can help find the right horse and can keep both you and your horse in tune with each other. While your local extension agent may or may not have horse expertise, they can direct you to someone who does and will be a valuable resource for pasture, weeds, and grazing management. They may also be able to connect you with hay growers, lime and fertilizer applicators, and other ag services. I will provide links to several additional resources on the website, including publications on body condition scoring your horse, manure management, and pasture management. Please refer to these publications for more in-depth discussion of the topics. If you have additional questions, I would encourage you to call your local extension agent, or you can email me at horse@vt.edu. And don't forget, next Friday I'll be available live to answer questions as well.